Mr. President, French special forces have deployed at the border. Intelligence Chief Amina Zerbo's voice came muffled through the radio. Ibrahim Traoré was looking at the map in the command center of a military base in northern Burkina Faso. He hadn't slept for 72 hours. A unit of 40 men is moving toward Niger. Fighting has begun with our advance units. Traoré's face darkened. This was no ordinary border violation. France's latest move was aimed at securing uranium deposits in the north of the country. "Prepare my special brigade," said Traoré, with cold determination in his voice. "I will lead this operation myself." General Ouedraogo objected. "Mr. President, this is too dangerous. You cannot go to the front." Traoré replied while tightening the belt of his uniform, "A president is not someone who sits in the palace sending his soldiers to death, but someone who fights alongside them." The general staff members and other officers in the command center looked at each other in surprise. None of them could object in the face of Traoré's determined attitude. As a former military trainer, Burkina Faso's young leader knew well the realities of the front line. Intelligence Chief Zerbo approached the map and continued to share the details. The French unit is advancing under the leadership of Commander Dupuy. They are all specially trained, fully equipped soldiers. Our intelligence indicates that the operation is particularly targeting Burkina's new uranium agreement. Traoré nodded. A few weeks ago, Burkina Faso had taken the operating rights of the rich uranium deposits in the north of the country from French companies and given them to Russian companies. This decision had caused great reaction in France. Now, they were trying to reverse the situation with this military intervention. "How many soldiers do we have at the mine right now?" asked Traoré. "A garrison of 15 men," said the defense minister. "Enough for routine protection, but vulnerable against a special forces attack." Traoré picked up the radio on the table. "Emergency order to all units. All units closest to the uranium mine should head there. Special Forces 1st Brigade prepare. We're leaving in 30 minutes." Officers quickly began preparations. As Traoré was arming his personal weapon, his military advisor Captain Caboret approached him. "Mr. President, have you considered the political consequences? Direct conflict with French soldiers could turn into an international crisis." "We are already in an international crisis, Captain," said Traoré harshly. "France is making a military intervention on the territory of an independent country. This is a cause for war." Within half an hour, Ibrahim Traoré and a team of 30 special forces left the base on 2 military helicopters. The target was the uranium mining area, about 100 kilometers north of the border. While in the helicopter, new information came from Intelligence Chief Zerbo. French troops are 20 kilometers from the mine. In the confrontation with our advance units, 3 of our soldiers were wounded. Our advance forces had to retreat. Traoré turned to the Special Forces Commander Major Ouedraogo beside him. "What's our plan?" "We'll reach the mine before the French and establish a defensive line," said the major. "Reinforcement troops will join us in 3 hours. We need to hold until then." Traoré nodded. This was a race against time. If French troops captured the mine, they would have scored a major diplomatic victory. Burkina Faso had to defend both the natural resources of the country and its sovereignty. As the helicopters flew low over the desert landscape, Traoré looked down through the window. The vast sea of sand stretching below them was occasionally interrupted by rocky hills. It was among these hills that uranium, one of the most valuable minerals of the modern world, lay, and this uranium was now at the center of a power struggle. 5 minutes to landing point," said the pilot. "We're landing at the northern entrance of the mine." Traoré completed his final preparations. His team consisted of elite soldiers fully prepared for battle. They were all the best trained and most experienced fighters of Burkina Faso. The helicopters landed on a flat area near the mine. The soldiers quickly disembarked and began to take defensive positions. The security chief of the mine, Captain Sankara, came to greet Traoré. "Mr. President, our situation is critical," said Sankara with concern. "French troops easily repelled our advance forces. They are very well armed and trained." "How many are they?" asked Traoré. As intelligence said, about 40 people. "But they are all elite commandos, the Special Operations Unit of the DGSE." Traoré looked around. The mining complex was like a modern oasis in the middle of the desert. There were several administrative buildings, processing facilities, and personnel accommodations. It was strategically difficult to defend, an open target on the desert plain. "Set up our defense lines," said Traoré. "Strengthen the main entrance gate, the north and east fronts. Place snipers at high points." As the soldiers quickly took position, Traoré spoke with the mine manager. Inside, there were about 30 civilians, including Russian experts. Is there a shelter for civilians? Asked Traoré. Yes, underground storage areas, said the manager. But they are not very safe if there's a conflict. Take them there immediately, ordered Traoré. This is a military operation and civilians should not be in danger. Within an hour, the defensive preparations of the mine were completed. Traoré stood at a checkpoint with Major Ouedraogo, scanning the northern direction with binoculars. A dust cloud was rising on the horizon. They're coming, said the major. 6 armored vehicles, approaching rapidly. Traoré's heart raced. A direct military confrontation with France could have severe consequences for Burkina Faso. But this uranium mine was vital for the country's economic independence. Send a radio message to all units, said Traoré. Don't open fire, but respond if fired upon. This is Burkina Faso soil and we are making a legitimate defense. The French convoy was approaching rapidly. The armored vehicles advanced, leaving the desert dust behind them. They stopped about 500 meters from the entrance of the mine, forming a crescent formation. A French voice was heard from the radio, to Burkina Faso forces. This is Commander Dupuy, French Special Forces. We request you to evacuate the mining area. There is a terrorist threat in the area and we are here to protect French citizens. Traoré took the radio in his hand. Commander Dupuy, this is Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso. You have entered our country's territory without permission. I request you to withdraw. There is no terrorist threat here and there are no French citizens in the area. There was a silence on the radio. Then, the surprised voice of the French commander was heard. Mr. President, are you there? Yes, I am defending our territory and sovereignty, said Traoré in a stern voice. I repeat, withdraw. This is viewed as a military intervention and is against international law. There was movement in the French vehicles. The commanders seemed to be talking among themselves. Then, armed soldiers began to disembark from the vehicles. Maintain your position, ordered Traoré to his own soldiers. Don't open fire, trigger discipline. French soldiers began to take positions in the desert sand, advancing. They formed a crescent shape surrounding the defense lines of Burkina Faso soldiers. The radio worked again. Mr. President, my orders are clear. We need to secure this mining facility. Please withdraw your soldiers. We don't want bloodshed. Traoré held the radio tightly. Commander Dupuy, I understand that you are under orders. But know this, if you take one more step, this will be an act of war. You will trigger a war between France and Burkina Faso. Tension was at its peak. Both sides were watching each other with weapons ready. The desert wind was blowing, raising the sands. Major Ouedraogo approached Traoré. Mr. President, reinforcements are on the way, but they will be delayed by 2 more hours. Right now we are at a numerical disadvantage and their weapons are more advanced. Traoré took a deep breath. This is a show of force, Major. If we step back, we will lose not only this mine but all the sovereignty of our country. At that moment, the voice of Intelligence Chief Zerbo was heard from the radio. Mr. President, emergency. Russian military planes have taken off from the Mali air base. They will be in your area in 20 minutes. Traoré's eyes lit up. Was Russia intervening? This could completely change the situation. Understood, he said into the radio. Share the information with the French commander. Traoré communicated with the French commander again. Commander Dupuy, before making the situation more complicated, I want to give you important information. Russian military planes are now heading to this area. They will be in the airspace in 20 minutes. There was a long silence on the radio. Then, Dupuy's voice was heard again. Is this a bluff, Mr. President? No, Commander. This is a fact. There is a defense agreement between Burkina Faso and Russia. And right now, according to this agreement, Russian planes are coming to support us. A panicked movement began in the French vehicles. Soldiers were talking to each other, radios were working. Clearly, this unexpected development had caught them unprepared. 10 minutes passed. As tension increased, Traoré and his team maintained their defensive positions. Jet sounds suddenly began to be heard from the horizon. Everyone looked at the sky. 2 Russian Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets passed over the area with a low flight. Their noise echoed in the desert. Traoré's radio worked. Burkina Faso forces, this is Russian Air Force Commander Lieutenant Colonel Petrov. We are here to support you. Maintain your position. Panic increased on the French side. Commander Dupuy was urgently trying to communicate with Paris via radio. Traoré knew he had gained an advantage. Commander Dupuy, he called through the radio. You see that the situation has changed. Russian fighter jets are now protecting this area. I again request you to withdraw. The French commander responded after a long silence, Mr. President, I need some time to assess the situation. Please maintain your positions, don't open fire. Understood, said Traoré. But remember, this is Burkina Faso soil. We reserve our right to self-defense. For an hour, both sides maintained their positions. Russian fighter jets were making regular low flights over the area, making their presence felt. Finally, a message came from the French commander, Mr. President, I have received new orders from Paris. We are withdrawing our troops. However, I would like to point out that this matter should be resolved diplomatically. Traoré took a relieved breath. Understood, Commander. I appreciate your withdrawal. Diplomatic channels are always open. French troops began to board their vehicles. Burkina Faso soldiers watched them on alert. As the vehicles began to move, Major Ouedraogo turned to Traoré with a relieved expression. Congratulations, Mr. President. You prevented a war. Traoré nodded. No, Major. We only postponed a conflict. France will not easily give up its control over our resources in Africa. The Russian fighter jets passed over the mine once more. As Traoré watched them, he thought. Russia's support was critical, but this should not turn into dependency. African countries had to achieve true independence, not move from one colonizer to another. The next day, when he returned to Ouagadougou, Traoré held a press conference. International media was calling the tension in the desert the African front of the new Cold War. Yesterday, we experienced a sovereignty crisis in the north of our country, said Traoré to the cameras. French special forces tried to seize our uranium mine. However, we are determined to protect the independence and territorial integrity of Burkina Faso. A journalist asked, Mr. President, what would you have done without Russia's intervention? Traoré smiled, a leader's strongest weapon is having the right allies. We chose Russia because they treat us as equal partners, not like colonizers. Reactions from Paris weren't delayed. The French president characterized the incident as a dangerous provocation by Burkina Faso. The French foreign minister accused Traoré of dragging Africa into a new Cold War. However, the people of Burkina Faso were impressed by their leader's courage. Thousands of people organized demonstrations in support of Traoré in the streets of Ouagadougou. Independent Africa, slogans filled the city. A week later, Traoré visited Moscow. In his meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, a new security agreement was signed. Russia would provide training and equipment to the Burkina Faso army, and in return, would gain privileges in uranium trade. This agreement is based on the principle of mutual benefit, not colonialism, said Traoré at the signing ceremony. Africa's resources will now be used only for the welfare of African peoples. On his way back from the Kremlin, Traoré was lost in thought on the plane. That critical moment in the desert had shaped not only a mind but the future of his country. Mr. President, said the foreign minister, sitting beside him. These recent events have completely changed our international position. We are no longer a small, insignificant country. Traoré nodded. Independence is not easily won, Minister. We need to defend it every day, at every step. As the plane entered Burkina Faso airspace, Traoré looked at the vast lands below through the window. These lands, where his grandfathers and great-grandfathers suffered under colonial rule, were now the battlefield of freedom. 2 months later, Traoré visited the base at the northern border again. The uranium mine was now working at full capacity. Russian technicians and Burkina workers were working together, breaking production records. However, security measures had also increased. A strong defense system had been established around the mine. Russian-made air defense systems were ready against possible attacks. What do the latest intelligence reports say? Asked Traoré to intelligence chief Zerbo. France continues to apply diplomatic and economic pressure, said Zerbo. But militarily, they have retreated for now. Our rapprochement with Russia worries them. Traoré nodded thoughtfully. And we should be careful not to become dependent on Russia. Our goal is complete independence, not moving from one master to another. That evening, meeting with the mine workers, Traoré made a short speech. The real wealth of Burkina Faso is not the mines underground, but the determination and courage of our people. We are building here not just a mine, but the future of Africa. A worker stepped forward and asked, Mr. President, will the French attack again? Traoré answered without hiding the truth. Colonizers never give up easily, my friend. But we will never bow down either. Because we know that independence is the most valuable treasure. After finishing his speech, Traoré went for a walk towards the desert. As the sun was setting, his shadow had stretched over the sands. There was only one guard with him. "Here, we made history a month ago," said Traoré, stopping. "But this is just the beginning. There is a longer road ahead of us for Africa's true independence." The guard respectfully bowed his head. "As long as you are in the lead, we are ready to walk on that road, Mr. President." Traoré smiled as he looked at the horizon. The desert was a symbol of both challenges and opportunities. Just like the destiny of Africa. This encounter in the desert was a sign not only of Ibrahim Traoré's personal courage but also that all of Africa was entering a new turning point. In the post-colonial independence struggle, there were now new leaders and new alliances that could stand against the old powers. And perhaps most importantly, African peoples now had the determination to shape their own destinies. "One day," said Traoré quietly, "every corner of Africa will be truly independent. And on that day, this moment we experienced in the desert will be remembered as an important step in that long journey." As the sun disappeared behind the sands of the Sahara, the stars began to shine. As the harbinger of a new day, new struggles.